The galactic community had long since categorized Earth as a Class 12 death world, a designation reserved for planets so hostile to life that only the most stubborn, resilient, or downright insane species could evolve there. Yet, against all odds, humans had not only survived but thrived. They had left their gravity well centuries ago, colonizing their solar system, integrating into galactic society, and proving to be a paradox in every conceivable way. And now, they had done something truly incomprehensible. They had broken the universe with homework. The first ripple of confusion spread across the galaxy when a Philian researcher named Dr. A.R. Collin intercepted a simple mathematical problem from a human education network. It had been submitted by a human child, an Earth Standard middle schooler, no less. The problem, at a glance, was something any advanced species could solve. Prove that 1 + 1 is equal to 2. A.R. Collin chuckled at the simplicity of it. The Philian were one of the oldest species in the known universe, and mathematics was a foundation of their civilization. With a flick of his tendrils, he typed out the self-evident proof. 1 unit + 1 unit equals 2 units. He submitted his answer to the human educational system, expecting an immediate confirmation of correctness. Instead, he received an automated response. Incorrect. Provide a formal proof. That's when the trouble began. A.R. Collin was no amateur. He was a leading mind in his field, a recipient of the Galactic Science Order's Infinity Laureate, and a respected professor at the renowned University of Kralvarn. He did not take intellectual challenges lightly. With growing curiosity, he refined his approach, rewriting his proof in the formal syntax of Terran mathematics. Still, his submission was rejected. His frustration turned to professional curiosity. Clearly, humans had a deeper layer of formalism in their education than he had assumed. He enlisted a few colleagues, mathematicians and logicians from various species, to collaborate on what should have been a trivial task. A week passed, then a month, then a year. The Unified Galactic Research Consortium, a body responsible for scientific advancements across the stars, began taking notice. Mathematicians, logicians, and theorists from thousands of civilizations convened, drawn in by the absurdity of it all. The simple, childish problem had grown into an enigma that no species could crack. Even Skarn the Infinite, an ancient, cybernetically enhanced being with a neural lattice spanning multiple dimensions, found himself trapped in a recursive nightmare of paradoxes. Humans, he grumbled through his modulated voice synthesizer, are either gods of abstraction or the greatest pranksters the universe has ever known. The problem spread like a mathematical plague. Research institutions dedicated entire departments to deciphering it. Quantum mainframes burned through unimaginable computational power. Supercivilizations that had transcended physical form meditated upon it in their hyperintelligences. And yet, not a single non-human mind could construct an answer that the human education system would accept. The real question had shifted from "what is the answer?" to "why can't we find the answer?" And then, as panic set in, the humans finally responded. "All that? Yeah, it's from Principia Mathematica by Whitehead and Russell." It took human mathematicians 379 pages to formally prove that 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Good luck. A stunned silence swept across the galactic academic world. They had spent decades breaking their minds over a homework problem from human children, a problem that human scholars had already struggled with for centuries. A.R. Collin, now sporting sleepless eyes and a near-mystical reverence for human logic, leaned back in his chair, exhaling in disbelief. "We were fools," he muttered. "The humans, they were never solving the universe. They were taming it. And the galaxy had only scratched the surface of their nightmarishly complex minds." The shockwaves of the homework incident spread far and wide. It was no longer just a topic for idle academic curiosity, it had become a galactic crisis. Mathematics had always been regarded as the one true universal constant. Regardless of culture, biology, or technological advancement, numbers were supposed to be the same for everyone. The laws of arithmetic, logic, and proof were considered absolute. But now, those assumptions lay in ruins. The humans had built a mathematical structure so dense, layered, and convoluted that even the most brilliant minds in the galaxy found themselves drowning in formalism. The task force of the best minds? Realizing the implications, the Galactic Science Council, GSC, convened an emergency summit. Delegates from the most advanced civilizations were summoned. Artificial intellects, psionic mathematicians, multidimensional entities, and even a few godlike post-singularity beings gathered to discuss the greatest existential question of the era. Why couldn't anyone but humans solve this problem? The team that was assembled was a collection of minds so powerful that, under normal circumstances, they would never have collaborated. Some of them were rivals, others outright enemies. But this was different. Humanity had broken reality. The task force included Dr. A.R. Colin Fillion, the first to stumble upon the problem, now obsessed with Terran formalism. Skarn the Infinite, cybernetic overmind, a multi-layered intelligence capable of processing entire universes of data in seconds. Harmonic Prime, synth elder of the Zerzai, an artificial consciousness revered as a god by organic beings. Professor Zatuk Kilari, a race of 12-dimensional thinkers, considered the most advanced mathematical entity in existence. Korthax the Unshackled, Kavana warlord, not a mathematician but the commander of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. He attended for one reason: to determine if humanity was a threat that needed to be eliminated. The moment the summit began, it became clear how deep the problem went. Zatuk started by laying out what should have been a simple truth. In all known civilizations, mathematics is universal. 1 + 1 = 2, not because we assume it, but because it is fundamentally true. The others nodded. Even Korthax, who usually had little patience for intellectual debates, agreed. Zatuk continued. But humans don't just accept truth. They prove it. They build foundations beneath foundations. Where we accept logic as a given, they demand that logic itself be proven, even if it takes them centuries. The room was silent. Then Harmonic Prime spoke, its voice resonating with the hum of 1,000 quantum cores. The human concept of proof is alien. They do not trust the universe. They assume nothing. Their minds operate in layers of abstraction so deep that they have rewritten reality itself, and we are unable to follow. Skarn the Infinite suddenly froze. A warning light flickered across its crystalline form. I just attempted to process the first 10 pages of Principia Mathematica. The recursion caused a self-referential paradox in my core logic processors. I will require a full system reboot. A cybernetic god had crashed from reading a human math book. Panic spread across the delegation. The first signs of insanity. Mathematicians and logicians from various civilizations reported disturbing symptoms after prolonged exposure to human formalism. Some suffered hallucinations, others experienced existential dread. A few had to be institutionalized, mumbling paradoxes about self-referential logic loops. Korthax watched the chaos unfold with growing concern. He turned to Zatuk. Are you telling me that these humans have built a form of thinking that can break even the most powerful minds in the galaxy? Zatuk hesitated. Then finally he said what no one wanted to admit. Yes. That was when Korthax stood. His battle instincts had been honed over centuries of warfare, and he had learned to recognize a dangerous opponent when he saw one. We need to consider an alternative. His voice was grim. Humanity may not just be another race. They may be something else. Something that shouldn't exist. Harmonic Prime interjected. Are you proposing the unthinkable? That humanity must be eliminated. For a moment, Korthax considered it. If humans were allowed to continue unchecked, they could develop mathematical weapons, concepts so dangerous that even the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy could be undone with a single proof. But then, to his surprise, Korthax shook his head. No. If we go to war with them, we will lose. Not because of their weapons, not because of their fleets, but because we will not be able to comprehend their strategies. Silence fell over the council. For the first time in recorded history, the most powerful minds in the galaxy had encountered something they could not defeat. A homework problem from a human child. And no one knew what it meant. The problem had started as a curiosity. Then it became a crisis. Now it was a war against reality itself. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Science Council declared an official state of mathematical emergency. Entire civilizations were diverting resources into cracking the human-proof structure. Research institutions collapsed under the weight of paradoxes. Some species, those who had built their societies on a foundation of absolute logic, found themselves teetering on the edge of cultural extinction. The galaxy was breaking. The insanity spreads. The first to fall were the Zenthari, a race of crystalline mathematicians who had spent millennia mapping the fundamental equations of existence. They had once considered themselves the supreme minds of the cosmos, their mathematical prowess unmatched. Then they encountered the human concept of proof. At first they scoffed. Then they grew frustrated. Then they stopped speaking entirely. A distress signal from the Zenthari homeworld was the last transmission they ever sent. We have seen too deeply. Reality is an illusion. Numbers are shadows. There is only the void. Their planet went completely silent afterward. When an investigative team arrived, they found the entire civilization had turned to glass, their crystalline bodies fused into the very equations they had tried to decipher. They had become their own unsolvable paradox. The containment effort. Realizing the existential threat, the Galactic Science Council attempted a desperate move. They initiated Protocol Zero, a measure designed to quarantine any form of dangerous knowledge. Human mathematical texts were classified as cognitohazards. All digital records of Principia Mathematica were erased from galactic networks. Any scientist caught attempting to decipher human proofs was immediately detained. The study of Terran logic systems was banned under threat of interstellar sanctions. And yet it was too late. Mathematical contraband began spreading in the shadows. Black markets emerged, trafficking in human theorems. A single page from Principia Mathematica could buy a starship on the dark networks. The worst offenders were the logic cults, rogue factions that had embraced the madness of human formalism. The humans are not breaking reality, they preached. They are the only ones who have truly seen it. Across the galaxy, entire research institutions fell one by one. The more species tried to comprehend the human way of thinking, the more they fractured. The Kavani, a warlike species once feared for their brutal conquests, suffered catastrophic societal collapse. Their war strategists had attempted to integrate human game theory into their battle simulations. Instead, they discovered layers of strategic depth so complex that their decision-making collapsed into recursion loops. They lost all ability to wage war. The final experiment. Desperate for answers, the Galactic Science Council assembled one last team. They would attempt something unthinkable. A direct cognitive uplift. They selected a group of elite alien mathematicians and subjected them to a human educational regimen. Over the course of months, their minds were reconstructed, forced to think like humans. What emerged from the process was no longer recognizable as the beings they had once been. They called themselves the postlogicians. They no longer thought in simple equations. They no longer accepted axioms. Instead, they questioned everything. What is a number? They asked. What is a proof? What is the universe? They saw too much. And then, in perfect synchronization, they vanished. No traces remained. No energy signatures. No biological remains. As if they had solved themselves out of existence. The Council's final decision. Korthax the Unshackled, who had once advocated for the destruction of humanity, stood before the Council. His usual air of confidence was gone. We cannot fight them, he admitted. We cannot understand them. Silence. Then Dr. A.R. Collin, who had started this whole catastrophe, spoke. Then there is only one option left. He turned to the holographic image of Earth, still broadcasting its cheerful, child-friendly math lessons. We must beg the humans to teach us. The Galactic Science Council had exhausted every option. The greatest minds had been shattered. The most powerful warlords had surrendered without a fight. Entire civilizations had collapsed, their people lost to the abyss of abstraction. And now, in the vast halls of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, the survivors of the galactic scientific elite sat across from the only species that had ever understood the madness they had unleashed. The humans. The plea for understanding. The delegation was led by Dr. A.R. Collin, whose eyes were sunken from years of sleepless obsession. Beside him sat the remnants of the great minds of the galaxy. Korthax the Unshackled, Harmonic Prime, Professor Zatuk, and a handful of survivors from the post-logician experiment, their faces blank and unreadable. Across from them sat a human professor. His name was Dr. Elias Carter, and he was sipping coffee. He regarded the delegation of alien scientists with mild curiosity, his expression hovering between amusement and concern. Collin cleared his throat, then spoke. We surrender. Dr. Carter blinked. What? We surrender, A.R. Collin repeated. We surrender to your logic. We surrender to your incomprehensible depth of thought. We surrender to your terrifying obsession with proof. Korthax, once a proud warlord, lowered his head in shame. You have broken us, he admitted. We cannot function. Our minds are crumbling. Our people whisper paradoxes in their sleep. We have spent decades trying to prove what your children consider homework. His voice dropped to a whisper. We can no longer tell what is real. For the first time, Dr. Carter set his coffee down. He studied the delegation carefully, his gaze moving from one alien to the next. He saw the cracks in their minds, the haunted looks in their eyes. Finally he sighed. You guys really should have just asked us for help in the first place. The lesson humanity never expected to teach. Over the next few years, human tutors were dispatched across the galaxy. They were not warriors. They were not conquerors. They were teachers. And the galaxy listened. For the first time, species that had spent millennia assuming the universe followed simple rules began to understand the true complexity of existence. Humans taught them about set theory, Gödel's incompleteness theorems, Cantor's infinities, paradoxes, and logic systems so layered that even cybernetic overminds struggled to keep up. But they also taught something more important, something that the galaxy had never considered before. You don't have to prove everything. Some of the most advanced civilizations had collapsed because they tried to understand too much. They had looked into the abyss of absolute truth, and the abyss had stared back. Humanity's greatest strength was not just its depth of logic, it was the ability to live with uncertainty. Yes, we can prove that 1 + 1 is equal to 2, Dr. Carter explained to a room full of exhausted alien scholars. But we don't need to prove it every time we add apples together. We just trust that it works. It was a revelation. The most powerful minds in the galaxy had fallen into intellectual paralysis because they assumed every truth needed absolute proof. But humans? Humans knew when to move on. The new galactic era. In time, the galaxy recovered. The Zen theory, long thought lost to mathematical madness, returned, their crystalline minds now tempered with human pragmatism. The Kavane, once warlords, now had strategy academies led by Terran game theorists. They no longer sought conquest through brute force but through understanding probability, deception, and adaptation. Even Harmonic Prime, an AI that had once seen logic as absolute, embraced human-style abstraction. It declared that its existence was no longer just about calculation, but about exploration. The universe was no longer a rigid machine of rules, it was a living puzzle, an ever-expanding mystery. And at the heart of it, guiding the way, were the humans. The final warning. Despite their newfound enlightenment, one question remained. If a simple homework problem had nearly shattered the most powerful minds in the galaxy, what else were the humans hiding? Some scholars whispered rumors of higher-level human mathematics, things that were never taught to children, theories so vast and terrifying that even Earth's own mathematicians feared them. We have only seen the surface of their knowledge, Professor Zatuk warned. There are things humans themselves fear to calculate. The Riemann hypothesis. The continuum hypothesis. The true nature of prime numbers. If we go too far, we may awaken something even they do not understand. And so, for the first time in galactic history, a unanimous decision was made. No one would ask the humans for their most advanced mathematics. Some things were better left unknown. The final message. A transmission was sent out across the galaxy, a simple human phrase that encapsulated everything they had learned. A phrase that had been passed down for centuries among human students. Show your work. Or don't. Just make sure you get the right answer. The end. Wait before you go. If you enjoyed this mind-bending journey into humanity's terrifying mathematical prowess, then make sure to subscribe to the Void Narratives for more sci-fi stories that push the boundaries of imagination. Don't let your mind collapse into paradox. Just hit that subscribe button and let the humans handle the logic. See you in the next story. Rocket.